Hey everyone, Brickbuilt Studios here. Today we're going to be taking a dive into the history of the LEGO minifigure. These little people we know and love have gone on quite the journey to get to what we see today. With many looks and short-lived versions, the history of the minifigure design has created a strong family tree. While there's been a large variety of styles that the LEGO group has created over the past 60 years, such as small-scale models and Barbie-like dolls, for this video I'm going to stick to versions that can interact with the LEGO building system. So going back to the 1960s, there were no small figures. Sets would allow kids to build people out of bricks, but that made limited playability. They were stationary figures that had to be taken apart and rebuilt into specific positions, and if you didn't have a lot of parts, your poses were restricted. All of this changed in 1974. With the release of the Homemaker theme came what is now referred to as the maxi figure. So while the bodies were still brick-built, the torsos were a special piece that added articulation to the arms. Additionally, printed heads were introduced, and they had interchangeable hair. The next year, in 1975, figures were scaled down and looked much closer to their current appearance. At 4 bricks tall, these characters had a blank face and solid torso and legs. The hats and hair were interchangeable, but were limited in styles and colors. 1976 saw the emergence of Duplo, which had very basic figures, a square body, and printed head. 1978, set number 600, featuring a police officer and patrol car, was released, and the public saw what is now known as the first minifigure. After several different prototypes, this unassuming policeman was just the beginning of what is now a strong run of over 40 years. This style of minifigure introduced 7 articulating points, with the arms, hands, legs, and head. The LEGO group finally found something that worked. Very little changed over the next few years. The design was pretty basic and often used stickers and prints to add the detail. Then, Fabuland came in 1979, and that was home to these fun but strange animals all the way through 1989, and the short-lived LEGO Basic line used a similar body style for its figures. Nearly 10 years after the Technic line began, this theme saw its own line of figures from 1986 to 2000. These action figure style characters were very articulate, though they saw little to no customization. Most only had helmets that could be added or removed. Now, if we go back to our standard minifigure, 1989 is when things started to change. 11 years after its initial release, minifigures were now seeing more design changes. Face prints had variety, with features such as facial hair and eye patches. Physical variations came too, with the introduction of peg legs and hook hands. And in the early to mid-90s, ghost and skeleton bodies arrived. Some big changes occurred in the 90s, but the standard body shape remained. Many more printed designs were seen and added personalities to the characters. The Western theme was the first to try adding noses to the faces, but, as you know, that didn't stick around for long. And nowadays, noses are only used on specific licensed characters and non-human creatures. During this time, another theme came out with its own version of figures. The Belleville line had doll-like people, which had clothes that you could put on or take off. Meanwhile, LEGO Primo, which was a line similar to Duplo with larger bricks meant for a younger audience, also came out, and it too had its own style of figures. With the creation of licensed sets in 1999 came a whole new era of the modern minifigure. Star Wars led to droids and custom-molded heads. Short legs for Ewoks and Harry Potter goblins showed up a few years later, along with spring-loaded legs for the basketball sports line. Custom shapes started with characters like the Troll or Hagrid from Harry Potter, or Jabba the Hutt from Star Wars. The 4 Juniors line, a transition theme between Duplo and LEGO, had its own version of the minifigure during this time too. Now, 2003 saw one of the biggest changes in the minifigure, skin color. Prior to this, minifigures were standard yellow color. With the basketball theme creating minifigures based on actual people, more accurate skin colors were used. That same year, a Star Wars set was released with all yellow minifigures except Lando. By having brown alongside yellow, it seemed as if yellow was supposed to represent white skin. So the next year, 2004, Star Wars had realistic skin color for more minifigures and soon removed yellow altogether. The LEGO group has stated, "We want to inspire the builders of tomorrow. That means kids from all around the world. We want every one of our fans, wherever they live and whatever their own skin color, to imagine themselves as part of the action. When we invented minifigures almost 40 years ago, we chose yellow because it's a neutral skin color. Nobody in real life has bright yellow skin, so LEGO minifigures don't represent a specific race or ethnic background, and nobody's left out. While we've made some minifigures that aren't yellow, they're usually based on characters we didn't create. We tried to make them look just like those characters so kids can play out the story at home." Now, this was not the first use of different skin tones. In 1983, Duplo used a light flesh tone in their figures and finally introduced a darker skin tone in 1989. While the variety of skin colors is still heavily white-leaning, the LEGO group maintains their stance of using skin colors mainly for licensed sets and yellow for everything else. In the last decade, a few more changes and additions arrived. With the 2009 board game releases came the microfigure. The next year saw the first use of what is sometimes called a nanofigure, then used as a trophy, but now has printed characters as well. Friends and later elves have what is called a mini doll. With a slimmer body, these figures have moving arms and hips, but no movement in the hands or individual legs. Baby minifigures came just a few years back, starting in 2016, and for most of these designs, the head is removable, but the rest is just simply too small to have any other movement or customizing options. And the latest figure introduction is within the Disney and Friends themes. Known as micro dolls, these are smaller versions of the mini doll and have only been released in a few sets so far. The minifigure has taken quite the lengthy journey to get to where it is today, but it seems to have found its home with the 1978 police officer. Though various prints, colors, and accessories have been added over the years, it's highly doubtful this basic style is ever going to change, but it'll certainly be fun to see where the future takes us. We hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about the LEGO minifigure. Be sure to like and subscribe to see more videos like these, as well as instructions, reviews, and other content. And of course, look for us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for short clips and fun giveaways. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.